Here's Brody Brazil.
Do you feel like people have lost patience and lost interest in this project only because it's gone on for so long? I feel like there's a bit of complacency actually sometimes. And I hear people who would support this, who favor it, but they go right back to, well, this isn't any farther along than Cisco Field was. I remember when they were going to move to San Jose also. Like an EIR approved, lawsuits being resolved, binding votes right around the corner. I want to give them the PSA, like, you're in the playoffs. I'll share my analogy with you in just a second. You tell me if you agree. But in terms of the sentiment right now, it's kind of a weird one sometimes if people are not in the loop.
Yeah, and I even think back like when Chase Center was getting built. You know, they had people, that was called the Mission Bay Alliance, oddly enough.
That was a huge opposition.
And they sued the EIR, and the hospital wasn't for it. You know, the nurses weren't for it. They thought there were going to be a lot of problems with how they got people in and out of the hospital in case of emergency. And this is the kind of stuff that happens. But I feel like with Chase Center, I didn't follow it as closely. And so with this, having gone on for decades now, like, this is when things are happening. I honestly, I don't know that I ever thought we'd see an actual EIR certified on any A stadium.
Right. Let alone a really good one that's been kind of I would say bulletproof, but it's kind of been invincible so far. Like, it just got challenged by 3 lawsuits and it won almost every. We forgot to talk about wind, by the way, but it won pretty much everything.
Yeah, and it passed the BCDC. I mean, everything that you needed to have happen has happened.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing that if you follow this thing for decades, it's easy to get checked out and not be interested because it's just dragged on for so long. But that's the point I keep making to people is like, this right now is the time. And a lot of the reason I'm even doing this and started doing it is because of that complacency. I noticed it and I saw it and I felt like it was either going to happen or they were going to slink off in darkness and no one was going to care or pay any attention and no one would be held accountable. And I was like, nope, everyone needs to be held accountable.
Here's my analogy, and you tell me if this is accurate in your viewpoint. The whole leading up to this process, the EIR getting certified, the state bills being passed to make the lawsuits go quicker, to expedite, the 270 days that they had to be resolved. There was so much legwork that went into this process, and that happened in 2018 and 2019. That was like qualifying for the playoffs, okay? So then the A's are in the playoffs with the stadium situation. The ALDS was the June 30th BCDC vote, right? Because that's a do-or-die elimination situation. If the BCDC says no thank you, project is done, right? That was an elimination round. We got past that. Now we're in the ALCS. The ALCS basically consists of getting an agreement with Oakland and getting a binding vote from Oakland. Once you pass that, then you get into the World Series, which obviously, ultimate prize. That's Alameda County joining in on the IFD with their own binding vote. That's the State Lands Commission. That's the BCDC's ultimate permit. And that's also, I had the lawsuits getting resolved actually as the World Series, but we're kind of almost, again, minus wind and minus some of the appeals, we're getting a lot done there. I feel like right now, if people say, where are we at in this process? A 2-0 series lead in the ALCS. And I'm also saying that the ALCS is going to be tougher than the actual World Series opponent. Does that make sense? Am I close there?
So, I might have started the playoffs or at least clinching the postseason with the Planning Commission vote. Maybe certifying the EIR was your wild card round. Okay. Since the A's always end up in the wild card. But
that's a really sore subject.
But here's the thing, and the point you just made in all of this is each round gets harder, right?
Right.
And so they've passed the Planning Commission, they certified the EIR, they passed the BCDC, the lawsuits are going well, but each step is far more complicated than the next. And so I think the biggest thing they have to do is when they get that DA and CBA voted on, that to me is like, I don't want to say it's the World Series, but that is the last thing that they have to do. If they get that done, I think it's adios Las Vegas at that point. You have this thing, and then it's just procedural going forward.
But that's the thing, right? Sometimes in sports, the NFC Championship game is way harder in reverse than the Super Bowl was. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes the ALCS is the difficult opponent, and then you get to the World Series and you win it 4-1. I don't know.
If the Niners beat the Rams in the NFC Championship game, they easily would have beat the Bengals and won the Super Bowl.
There you go.
That's the analogy.
The hardest part of this whole process is where we're at right now. And it's also the most nerve-wracking because, again, I'll go back to the conversations I have with people, the conversations many more that you have with people. I don't know that we're getting answers. We're getting positive signs. The mayor, Dave Cavil, both presenting that, hey, things are on track, things are going well. Lauren Taylor told me every time he hears an update, it's generally good. But nobody can really answer the question of how close are we, and will this actually happen here in the fall to take a vote by the end of 2022? So I think that's just kind of putting it full circle. It's unknown when the rest of these ALCS games are going to get played.